Come to the podcast. We'll have a laugh. It'll be a good time.
Well, we got the obligatory out of the way, so.
Exactly. It's a great comment. Yes, we're talking Die Hard.
Oof. Well, it's a total mystery what we're talking about today, so yeah.
We're talking about the best Christmas movie ever.
And you know what? Well, that used to be a joke.
The second best Christmas movie.
I totally get how it's a Christmas movie. I didn't realize it factored so much into the movie. I thought it was just a meme that it's a Christmas movie,
right?
But it totally fits.
Yeah, I mean it's largely a Christmas movie because of the time frame it takes place, right? That's always been kind of the joke, and I think Die Hard 2 has a very similar thing where it's just like they're traveling around Christmas, right? So that's kind of the joke, but yeah, I mean it's important for him to be there. It's important for the party. It's important for like why the thieves decided to attack when they did, that sort of thing. So it really becomes plot relevant, and it's one of the things, like, part of why I like this movie, just to get this hook in there early, is that there's not very many, if any, wasted details. Like every kind of like throwaway line comes back around somewhere, and it's the same thing for the Christmas thing, right? So. But yeah,
I think it's kind of in one of those one of the categories of movies I would call like thrillers that are just super competent thrillers, where like no character is stupid, every character is smart,
right?
So I put like the villain makes no mistakes, the hero makes no mistakes. It's just a well thought out thriller. I think I put The Fugitive in that category. I put True Lies in that category. Just great.
True Lies, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Arnold. That's a thriller.
Well, look, it's a comedy. It's okay. It's a comedy film. But okay, but definitely The Fugitive is in this. Definitely The Fugitive is in this category, right?
Sure.
Where it's the villain is really cool and makes no mistakes and it's not an idiot plot. It's the opposite. It's a genius plot.
Right. Well, and literally, like, other than the fact that they have John McClane running around being a pain in the ass, right? Gruber is literally on schedule all the way up until they get the detonators, more or less, right? He pretty much gets everything exactly when it intends to, and then John McClane bumps his elbow, more or less, right? They literally all but get away. They've got the money. They break into the vault. They're on their way out.
Right.
And then you just have these like two happenstance things that they could have never planned for. One of the key ones outside of John McClane, even though it relates back to him, is Argyle. Argyle takes out their escape vehicle, right? And there's like, who would have thought? Who would have thought there would just be a limousine and that the crazy asshole would ram their ambulance and whatever, so like that scene gets me too, where it's just like, dude did nothing for 90% of the movie, and then he's just there at the last minute being like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on, but I know I'm going to stop it. And that's that's literally the whole movie, right? That's John McClane's only thought process practically, is I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to stop it. It's wild. I mean, the amount of hardware they brought in, right? They literally planned for everything, including the FBI's involvement, including armored cars and that sort of thing. So, but anyway,
yeah, I mean, the FBI was even a requirement to make it happen,
right?
Do you think one of the reasons that you say that it's so tightly plotted and that there is like no wasted lines, as you put it, as I understood it when I watched a little like documentary bit about it, it's like if the movie was basically being written as they shot it. Like they were not very far ahead of the scenes they were shooting for the next scenes they needed to shoot.
One of you guys has a microwave. Yeah,
I think that's Alex.
Oh, okay. It's one of those things where it's like lightning in a bottle, right? Iron Man was the same way, where it doesn't seem to be Alex. So she's muted now, but
well, it's not me.
Okay.
Ben?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that
It was Ben.
What did I do?
We can hear a microwave in the
microwave.
background.
Oh,
it's just one of those things. Like they didn't even have John McClane fully fleshed out until halfway through the movie, according to a bunch of trivia and interviews and stuff like that, right? So, it's bizarre, but the whole, like, even the catalyst of something that's a huge plot point during the movie about him being barefoot, and he's literally running around kicking these guys' asses with his bare feet. And the reason why he's barefoot is because he was doing that stupid make fists with your toes thing from the first guy he talks to in the movie, the fellow passenger on the plane.
It is because
Ellis,
of this movie. If there's any disaster, I'm putting on my shoes first.
well, and I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, dude's a cop. Like he should have at least like grabbed his sneakers on the way out. But like, I understand him escaping. Like in the movie, it's such a tight timing. The dude's literally in the hallway with an MP5, and as soon as he turned his back to a distraction, Bruce Willis slips out, right? And you see him try to get shoes. Yeah, you see him try to get shoes through the movie, but it's just. It obviously pays off and becomes a big deal that he wasn't able to get, footwear. And it's still 80% of the movie. He runs around literally barefoot until he runs into Gruber face to face. And Gruber is like, wait a minute, you've been killing my dudes without fucking shoes? And then, they corner him in the server room and it's like, blow out the glass, and then of course it's Hollywood. So it takes you 900 rounds to break a couple of windows. But, like shoot stuff like that. Glass. Right. The other one though that literally pays off towards the end is that when he finally gets to the party and Ellis is being a big shot dick, which is his character to a T, right? He makes a big huge deal about how they got her a Rolex. Hans Gruber's holding onto the fucking Rolex right before he falls, right? Like John McClane goes and takes the Rolex off of his wife's wrist. It's like just there's literally like nothing. There's nothing that I saw that was like, oh man, when is that going to pay off? It all comes back around somewhere.
Well, and the nice, maybe the more obvious one I think that I really appreciated was the thing about because he has trouble with his wife, she puts the picture down, and that's the only reason Gruber doesn't see it.
Yes.
Yeah, and
didn't she do that when she met him the first time though? Like, because
exactly.
he's sitting in her office, and then she catches the photo and puts it face down. But that's a great thing too. Right.
Well,
no, if you mean she does it the first time she meets Gruber, that's not the.
No,
it's done before that.
I thought it was the when
she gets annoyed and puts down the picture.
That's what I'm saying. Gotcha. So when they argue, she puts it down, and that's perfect. That's brilliant little setup for
right.
I really like that.
That way she can plausibly just say by her last name, and without
Miss Gennaro.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than fessing up.
Right. Yeah.
And I liked Ellis's character. That he's just this total just standard dick, but still when he goes to he tries to be a big shot and be like, yeah, I'll handle this. I'm used to big things. He still actually protects Holly to the end. He doesn't ever give in and say that he was there to see her, even though they're about to shoot him. Right. So I actually thought that was it gave more complexity to his character, even though he's not in the movie that much, right? It's like, I just thought it was pretty neat.
He's still the nightmare salesperson from hell, though.
Well, he's the super stereotypical 80s character, right? Like in any big office, you're going to have this guy, right? He's the bro who's hopped up on literal cocaine, making $1 million deals and just whatever. It's so 80s, and I don't know. He at the same time, like you said, he's not a total dick, right? I don't believe anyone's 100% a dick, but obviously, like whatever he thought he was going to get from them by getting John McClane out of the way, I guess just resolve the situation faster. That was never obvious, but talking about wasted things, right? While he's talking to John McClane on the radio, they bring him Coke. in the form of a soda.
Because he won't stop snorting it.
Well, yeah, because he's like, hey, you guys got any Coke? And so they bring him a fucking Coke. That's hilarious. So, but
what if I told you? I just looked this up. What if I told you that the writer of Die Hard is the same as the writer of The Fugitive?
oh, nice.
He
I
wrote.
did not realize.
Those are the two big films he wrote. He looks like he also did. There's a couple of another 48 Hours, Just Cause, Lock Up. Not a lot of stuff I've heard of otherwise.
Just Cause
Die
sounds
Hard.
familiar.
Right.
Die Hard was his first film, and The Fugitive was one of his last films. He had a short career, and he kind of showed up again in 2010, but he basically only had a career for about less than a decade.
Wow.
Which is pretty phenomenal.
Right.
the two best written movies I've ever seen in this genre, and he wrote both of them. And that's pretty amazing.
And also, yeah, I mean, it certainly makes a load of sense too. That you're like, you know what's another good example? Also, the thing that this guy did. So, it's better to see that sort of thing than the ones that you feel like just got lucky, right? They get their one-hit wonder, and nobody knows what they did that struck so right, that hit that resonance. But this guy at least got it twice and in two big ways, right? Like The Fugitive is, a big, amazing movie unto itself. So
perfect movie, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my wheelhouse, right? So I'm not necessarily thinking, about the ins and outs, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. But for what it is, probably. So
this is funny though, because I think objectively, I think Die Hard is the better movie, but somehow, because I just watched both of them, I enjoy the second one more. I mean, I'm not sure why, but I think it might be it's a couple of years later. I think the production is quite a bit better for the movie, but I also think in many ways character and plot is better in the first one. But yeah, so I don't know, but I like them both, but I get a little more enjoyment out of the second one. And well, the third one's not really a Christmas movie, so I never watched that one. But the other two I watch like every year.
Die Hard with a Vengeance, Samuel L. Jackson, right? Before he was in everything and everybody knew who he was for the most part, at least in my opinion. And Die Hard with a Vengeance, like I rewatched it in like maybe it's been like 5 or 10 years, right? Since this particular watch that I'm thinking about. But it started a trope for me when I watched these really old, 80s and 90s movies. Which one of these movies, the plot would have entirely unraveled if we had a cell phone? That's Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? Because they're literally running around to pay phones and shit like that. And that just that doesn't age well, right? Like you're going to have to explain to your kids, like, why did they go to phones? Why are there phones on the street? What's going on? But even in like the first Die Hard, right, they have car phones, which is a very close second there. They're still mobile compared to, being hardwired into a building and whatever else. But yeah, I really dig on Die Hard with a Vengeance, but it's, I mean, they get tropey, right? Die Hard it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like Die Hard flips a lot of the 80s super action on its head by making John McClane a regular dude dealing with common thieves instead of, super soldiers or terrorists or whatever else, even though the original source material deals with that. And then you get, like even the titles, right? You've got, Die Hard, Die Hard 2. You're not.
It's not Die Hard, Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
Right. Well, but it's not true. But you can hear Die Hard 2 this time it's personal, or Die Hard with a Vengeance, or whatever. Because like these tropes are there, and like they follow Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, several other really well known, either cop movies, buddy cop movies, all sorts of things. But it's so. It's key to the tropes, right? It's just funny, and not realizing like how many first timers were in Die Hard. I think that's the other takeaway, right? You've got like talking about it being a perfect movie. I think it's vitally important to remember, as Ben said, so this is the writer's first movie. It's fucking Alan Rickman's first movie. He had been in Hollywood. He had been in Hollywood less than a week. He tried to turn it down because he's a stage actor and didn't want to, get into some big Hollywood action movie. And his, like, he had some agents be like, no, bro, trust me, take this fucking movie, right? It's wild to think what might have been different if that hadn't been the case. And he does such a good job with it,
I'm really disappointed. I wish Alan Rickman had a better career. I get that, yes, he's in Die Hard, but like he really deserved like a stellar lead role. Like, he's good in Galaxy Quest. He's perfect for Snape in the Harry Potter movies.
So, how many perfect movies has he been in, Ben? The ones that we talked about.
Are we counting Love Actually?
Did we watch Love Actually?
Do you think we watch happy movies here?
Well, yeah, no. Well, I just he's a better actor than his roles have been. I think he's a better actor than Severus.
He was
Snape.
like the
he's
best
a better
thing
actor
in
than
that Robin Hood movie. He was like the best thing of that movie.
He was so good in.
I'll use a spoon. It will hurt more
because it's dull, you idiot.
Yeah,
I fucking love him.
Was that a good movie?
Yes.
Let's say no.
Well, see, that's what I mean. Is like
part of a
Morgan Freeman,
classic,
Kevin Costner. Are we gonna fight? Is this what we're gonna fight about?
He's in Sweeney Todd, dude. That is a classic.
And unlike other Robin Hood actors, I have a British accent.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Let's see if my internet stays okay.
Quigley Down Under, like, come on. Yeah. I'm just going back through because it's like I don't know his full filmography. Right, he's the angel in Dogma. Come on, these are key.
Oh, so good in that.
Key roles, man.
He plays it so well. He's really good at comedy, actually.
Yeah, he can do a great mix of like the villain, and he can be a comedic villain, and he can just be comedic. He can vary between them very well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Marvin in Hitchhiker's Guide, like.
Who's the perfect voice?
You'd be depressed too if you had the intellect of a planet. So something paraphrased, obviously, but Yeah, but I mean, he is probably going to be most well known for Snape, for most people. But
I mean, he was a very good Snape. He was too old for the role. That's just a pet peeve of mine.
Maybe, I don't know, man. I'm not necessarily saying you guys are wrong on any of this, but all I got to do is think about, him talking to, Harry at the time and going through his memories in the sieve, and then think about Always. And I pretty much get choked up every time. So I'm not really sure how I could have improved that delivery and scene, but So.
I have another pet peeve with Snape, but that's not to do with the movies. That's the story in the books too. Like, he was a fucking bad dude and a bully, and Harry should not have named his kid after him.
Right. The word you're looking for is bastard. Snape is a bastard, right? But he was our bastard, so it's okay. But... Yeah. Anyway, so Ben, is there anything that comes to mind other than generally just having wanted him in more things? Is there something you're like, man, I wish Alan Rickman did this?
Better things. I wanted more things than better things. He was in a lot of kind of lame movies where he was the best part in it. I want him to be in a movie, more movies, not just more movies like Die Hard, which it's a great movie, but it's still an action movie. I'd like to see him in great ensemble casts and great movies. That's pretty much his Galaxy Quest, I think, is going to be his best movie like that, and it's still kind of it's a silly comedy. He could have done so much more.
Have you ever seen this? Can you come with an example? A movie like he should have been this kind of movie.
He was. Have you ever seen Sense and Sensibility? He's in that.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a great adaptation of the Jane Austen novel. That's something where he kind of plays against the kind of the type that he's given. A lot of his movies, he's just kind of this sneering, unlikable, miserable kind of guy. That's most of his roles. He got pretty well typecast, I feel like. I think he could have played against type a lot more.
When he broke it. Like Marvin isn't sneering, or when he was in Dogma, I wouldn't call him
He was
sneering.
a little sneering in Dogma.
Not quite so much.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
We got to talk about the introduction scene where he points out his lack of genitalia. And
It's not a level of sneering. It's just get over yourself.
right.
Spitting out alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he's also just gone too soon. It's one of those kind of things.
Yes,
I
for
miss
sure.
the guy. It's one of those things.
You wanted
No,
more
yeah,
of
that-
him. That is fine. It's not necessarily the same thing to malign his career.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of his movies, honestly, right? Like outside of what we've talked about, outside of the ones that intersect my typical interests, right? So, it's possible, he was better in some of these roles and everything like that. I kind of wanted more substance to it, just because it's like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, you could almost say the same thing about Patrick Stewart, right? Like Patrick Stewart's another one of these, British, acted on the stage, a lot of his proper acting talents would arguably be said to be wasted on shit like TNG or, Logan, things like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I love him. I love the shit he's been in. I think he's great. I think he does add to these roles, but those do not necessarily get helped by having a Shakespearean background, right? Like he does come across the aisle a lot, especially in TNG and whatever, and maybe it helped him behind the scenes to be able to actually do some of the acting and that sort of thing. But like when you're thinking, Shakespearean theatrical stage background, you don't immediately be like, oh man, this guy'd be perfect for Logan, where he's basically amnesiac, super telepath, or maybe he should be the captain of the flagship of the Starfleet, or whatever, right? So Alan Rickman in a similar kind of vein is that, right? Like they definitely intersected a lot of my places, but it maybe didn't show off their full range of talents and that sort of thing, right?
I kind of
If
got
you
the
just watch
impression
these.
watching Die Hard again last night that he must have been wasted on a stage, because the amount of minute information that he was able to project so much in so little movement of his face, that it was great. Like when Ellis is being like, yeah, I can get you the guy, and he's just like, what are you talking about? But he can do
Right.
it with such little, like he can be endearing to Ellis what Ellis wants to hear, while also be mocking him at the same time. And
Right.
it's like, if you had to put that on a stage and like be projecting large enough for people far away to be able to see it, it's a different level of acting or different quality. And it's like, he has the skills to do the really close-up shots, and he'd be wasted on a stage.
Right.
Not that I ever
It's
saw
funny.
him in theaters.
I was just thinking that too. Like this, usually that's a weakness of the stage actors, right? They might not be the best. They're not used to really trying to emote with their face too much, because they're more body, I guess. But he does
Yeah.
it really well. Also, another fun trivia from the documentary I watched: his surprise when he drops out of the building is very real.
Yeah.
Which is quite fun.
To me, that bit of trivia is the same as Aragorn breaking his toe, right? If you talk to a diehard fan, sorry, I had to do it, but if you talk to a diehard fan, then this one comes up every watch, right? And it's funny if this is the first time that you've heard it, but yeah, like they had the stuntman, stunt coordinator, whoever, like holding him like 20 feet above the airbag or whatever like that, and they're like, okay, we're gonna drop you on 3, 1, 2, bye. so the fear in his face and the surprise is absolutely real. Gets me every time, man. So yeah. But I mean, they also did a similar thing with him, with the two of them meeting up, right? That was another thing that I pulled out of the trivia, was that John McClane and Hans Gruber, like Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis, didn't interact on the set or meet up prior to filming that scene, because they wanted the awkwardness and the like bumbling to be enhanced, I guess, or whatever, however you want to say it, by them running into each other for the first time, right? So that's kind of fun too. You get all these little details. Alien had the same thing with a chest burster scene. Like, getting actual legitimate surprises, pulled off on your actors that are supposed to be professional and act surprised and shit, and then you get these little nuggets, but it's always fun.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just looking at my notes, I mean, I've got a smattering of other random details. Like, I don't know. Like, is there anything bad about the movie? Is there anything that, Ben, you too, especially, right? You come out with these takes sometimes, and you're like, the movie was great. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, why Coca-Cola, or whatever, So I'm just like, was there anything that jumped out at you?
Why wasn't it in black and white?
No.
Right.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of a good action movie, and if you're not in the mood for that, it doesn't work. I mean, what else?
Sure.
I'm not. You're looking for me to try to figure out something to criticize. I didn't come with something.
No,
some criticism of that pocket.
I just, yeah. No, I was just curious.
That crazy take from you. So.
Yeah,
No.
I wanted a perpendicular kind of take. I'm trying to open myself up to more of the possibilities. Like one of the things that I don't think it's a criticism of the movie, right? But this could have been a take I would have seen from you or possibly brought up, right? So it's what I've got in my mind, which is the fact that I kind of mentioned it earlier, right? John McClane he's not Rambo. He's not Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from Commando. He's not ex-Special Forces, I fought a predator, like a way over the top action hero. John McClane's a dude. And, this is another one of those kind of firsts in Hollywood. I'm not necessarily going to say it's a first, but it certainly was a big enough splash to pivot the direction of a lot of these movies, right? Where no longer are you the super cop, super soldier, Space Force, whatever, like John McClane is literally a dude. John McClane's got problems. He's separated from his wife, and, his kids haven't seen him in how many months or whatever. Like those sorts of things.
Bruce didn't have the right look. I think they didn't even want to promote him on the posters.
Well, yeah, right. Initially, all of that plays into it behind the scenes. But I'm just talking from like a story and character perspective. Like Al's another one, right? Al is, they have this connection and whatever, and then Bruce Willis, John McClane takes it too far and jokes about, what's the matter? You're too good for the street type of situation, and he has to explain he made a mistake, and that's it. And he gets a little bit of redemption at the end. But since you like to focus a lot on the story elements, I figured I'd highlight some of those. So, but it's not just machine guns, though there are a lot of them. Ho ho ho. So, but. So
this movie is hilariously dated, I'll say.
Yeah, in what way?
I mean, he had a gun on a plane.
Yes. I knew you were gonna do it. Like it's like my third trivia point. No, it's second. But yeah, like I was like 94. You were born in 94, right?
93.
93. So yeah. So I was like, there. She's gonna call that out definitely.
I do remember before 9/11 being on planes, and then I do remember like the security shit did get exponentially worse.
Right.
But I don't feel like at any point when I was flying that having a passenger having a gun on him on the plane would have been okay.
Right. Well, like even in the 80s, like I'd be curious to see it more contemporary, because I know, they had like a lot of hijackings in the 80s, right? And that sort of thing. That's where it started to get to a head. And I've read some stuff where they talked about, so to tell you how far this conversation has gone, right? When all of that started happening, they started talking about the usage of metal detectors in the first place. And they thought that the American public was basically just going to like melt down just by using metal detectors to try and, thwart people trying to bring weapons onto the planes in the first place. Holy shit, have we gotten far away from that now that we're practically, X-ray scanners and dogs and everything else since then. But it's kind of interesting how that security posture has evolved over the couple of decades. But yeah, to just see him like, have it in the shoulder rig and then just completely not care about it, you know. Like, obviously the other passenger is concerned, right? So it's probably not super normal anyway, but you know, that's definitely worth mentioning in the movie. That is one of the things that very much dates it, right? So
I kind of assumed when I like that you would need to identify yourself as a cop to get a gun aboard a plane.
He might have had
sure.
to do
Back
that
then too.
for like security stuff, but like.
But in the
It's
80s,
still
he
weird.
probably just flashed his badge to the person at the ticket counter, right? Like, you know, like maybe it's security, because obviously if he's got to
With
go
a
through the metal
with a
detector,
cigarette in his
you know.
mouth.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a cop.
Right. So, yeah.
That's another thing. Like smoking everywhere. Like in the second one, especially, it's like people just sitting smoking all around. It's like
Yeah, it's the thing that
That's not
bugs
a
me
thing
when
anymore.
rewatching Alien, and they're all smoking in a fucking spaceship.
Yeah.
But smoking
Well-
was everywhere. I remember, like, when we were going into a restaurant, were you smoking or non-smoking? Like, that was a thing up until it suddenly wasn't.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Up until almost at least the early 2000s, you know, like, you know, it's certainly
Yeah.
like
I
it
never
started
got that.
it started to lose some prevalence in the late 90s and stuff, but it's not until the 2000s where you start to finally get the like smoking bans, right? I'm not 100% sure, but like even in Utah, like you've got the Utah Clean Air Act, right? So you're not allowed to smoke in and around 25 feet of a building now, you know, so like there are no smoking, non-smoking sections, but yeah, easily into the late 90s, early 2000s, and it depends state to state, city to city sometimes, but yeah, like that's something else that changes it. Not to mention the fact that the dude is doing coke on her desk, and his boss basically barely gives him stink eye about it. Like his boss absolutely knows. He's probably just more annoyed that a stranger caught
This
him.
this is how
You
this
know?
is how these policemen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just, Dallas is such a dick. I mean, okay, he's doing coke, but he's doing it on her desk
Right.
after trying to get her to go home with him instead of to go home to her family on Christmas Eve.
Right. And he knows she's got kids. He's got to, you know, like, yeah.
Because
So-
he's seen the pictures. He was sitting at the desk where the pictures are of her children while snorting coke off of them.
Right. Anyway, yeah.
Did any of you watch the second one while to
Long time
this
ago.
podcast? So not
Not-
recently, okay.
Yeah, not recently. So, yeah.
It's
Planes. I remember planes.
Yeah, I
You
think
should, you
it's
should watch it. It is good. I really like it.
right, because it mostly take place in and around an airport, right? So,
It does
yeah.
take place in the airport. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Basically the premise here is he has to pick up his wife from the airport, and then terrorists attack for reasons,
right.
and he runs around and is a pain in the ass to it's also funny because he's less alone here in a way, but he's still alone because you know the kind of the cops are kind of incompetent and stuff.
Right.
So it's mostly just him. He's like, "Oh, you gotta listen to me," and they're like, "We got this," and then they don't have it, and then he has to run and do something.
Yeah, the reporter from the first movie that violated almost every ethical violation by threatening the nanny with deportation,
Right.
to put the kids on TV without the parents' permission or even present, because it might be the
Right.
last time they get to talk to their parents in the tower. He was seated on the plane with the wife on the second movie, and they had restraining orders. So they had to be a certain amount of distance, which couldn't happen.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And the stewardess is like, "Wait, you're the one who punched him on TV? Would you like a bottle of champagne?"
She walks
Right.
over to him to her after he's like, she's got a restraining order. She can't be. And then she goes, "What did you do to him?" I knocked out 2 of his teeth. And then she's like, "Oh, would you like some champagne?"
Right. Yeah.
As you know, he's a pain in the ass, and he's also it's brought up by the stewardesses there. Oh, they really loved his reportage on the junkyards in disguise and bimbos in airplanes, which is apparently some things he did. So they don't particularly like him.
Okay, I'm gonna poke the director now since I'm making my way around it. Andreas, I don't have anything for you at the moment, but we got time. So one of the things one of the things that came out of the trivia kind of highlighted a discussion that we've had about other movies that will remain nameless for about 5 more seconds in the past, which is in this movie, there's a lot of jokes. How do you think the jokes came across during this serious action movie? So
I like this because this reminded me of The Mummy in the way that it balanced the action and the Looney Tunes and the happy, like the comedy. Yeah, it does.
The Looney Tunes? That's what you...
Well, that's what I had said before about The Mummy. Like, there's some form of, like, there's just a little bit of crazy absurdity of what's going on in The Mummy. And, like, so it's like, yeah, it's like action with some jokes, and I really liked it. I like the dark humor that is all of John McClane's character. Like, he's making jokes of, like, really dark humor while pulling glass out of his feet. Right. And that's his distraction. That's the only painkiller he's got is dark humor. I liked it, but maybe it's just nostalgia. I grew up with this movie. Like, I watched it so many times, I can't even count. But
I'm surprised you watched it so many times, but you apparently don't really watch the second one. For me, they're so connected because they're both.
I think I had this one on VHS, and I didn't have the second one.
I might be
because that was dated too. VHS, I had them.
Oh, another argument for them being Christmas movies. They're actually aired pretty much on Christmas in Denmark every year. Both of them.
Right. Yeah. Well, because it's the most American Christmas movie you guys have, right? So, makes sense.
I don't know.
Well, when you think
what about actual Christmas movies from America?
Yeah, but a lot of those are like European or at least, heavily influenced by, right? But what other totally American action-y Christmas, where else would those things intersect perfectly except for Die Hard?
It's not really, I'm not sure if it's action-y, but another thing that's shown a lot is the one with the home improvement guy where he becomes Santa.
Yeah, the Santa Claus,
the Santa Claus, yeah, right.
Yeah, right. So CLAUSE, right? So
right.
And Tim Allen, by the way. Also,
the Arnold Schwarzenegger Christmas movie is also very American.
Jingle All the Way, that one?
Oh, yes, the one with the European man in it is the American movie.
Well, he's more American than most Americans.
I know, right? I was like, you're not wrong, but
that's before he was the governor, okay?
So, yeah, right.
But I saw in the
he's
trivia,
the future president of the United States. If you watch Demolition Man, it's okay. So
in the trivia, they had wanted to give the part of McClane to Schwarzenegger, but at that point, they just have the whole movie in German. That'd be dumb.
Inappropriate. No, I'm just kidding. But that's definitely in there too, right? Like there's a huge host of alternate actors that were a lot better known at the time, right? Because that was one of the things we kind of mentioned was that Bruce Willis is coming off of like a rom-com type of thing, right? And nobody took him seriously to the point that they put the building on the poster, but left him off of it. Right until much later, but it's like Richard Gere, Sylvester Stallone, Harrison Ford, Mel Gibson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Clint Eastwood, Robert De Niro. It's just like, would the movie have been improved by any of these? Right, because to me, that's where we get into like, is it a perfect movie to us? But then also go down the permutations, right? Where it's just like, if we've got all these alternate actors, like to me, if we had cast Arnold Schwarzenegger, what would have been different between that and 20 of his other action movies, right?
Right.
You would have Arnold,
the superhero action movie, which is not what they wanted. They wanted him as an everyman. And
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't think anyone could do that better at the time than Bruce that I can think of. Like
Richard Gere seems like a really weird choice.
I agree, but yeah, he was in there. Like I just now I have this idea of like Arnold taking the minigun off of that crashed helicopter and kicking in the vault and be like, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!" and just which is great, but I'm not sure it would have been better,
Yeah, so. I liked a lot of what they did with it. He was an everyman character. When I had watched this when I was really a kid, my parents had split when I was a baby, so them being split was. I don't know. I assumed that they had been actually divorced. It's been a year since I've seen it, but that they had only separated basically because they had a giant fight. But they still wanted to get together. That was something that was interesting, and I really liked that they still loved each other. They were having a fight about her name and the fact that she was taking the opportunity all the way across the country, but that it wasn't just, oh, there's an action movie, therefore he gets the girl. It was actually they still loved each other the whole way through. I really liked that. And it's an everyman thing. It's not like if it had been Schwarzenegger it would have been more the action movie hero gets the girl and less the personal touches. It's like after Takagi was killed and he says, "Why didn't you do anything?" Well, because then you'd be dead too, asshole. And it's like he's dealing with the fact that he couldn't and a little sense of helplessness and he has to do something more. But Schwarzenegger wouldn't give that as much. He's too many muscles.
Well, and it might have added itself just fine to like, so the original novel, my understanding is like the love interest wasn't, you know, his estranged wife or separated or whatever, but was a stewardess, right? So you could have still had that, you know, girl angle, why she was at the party or whatever was going on there. I'm not 100% sure, but it's like, so like there are angles there, but I mean, it does start to change the DNA of the movie, right? Where it's like, okay, these movies could have been brothers or cousins or something like that, but it's not necessarily going to be the same thing. And like you said, I mean, 1988, you know, like Arnold still has, you know, like you can tell, you know, English is a second language, that sort of thing. In 1988, I'm sure his accent would have been even thicker. So like, would they have done what they did with the European releases and just flipped it where the bad guys were British instead of German, you know, so that Russian, you could still have, yeah, right. Do you still have that contrast, you know? So, but
you reminded me, Russian. You reminded me of something from like half an hour ago. The other movie that I've seen recently that's a perfect no mistakes thriller, Hunt for Red October.
It's a really good movie.
Except maybe Stellan Skarsgård makes a mistake towards the end, but a lot of smart moves from a lot of people. Cat and mouse game kind of movie. I think it's a great movie.
I really like it. I'm trying to find an argument is all, but it's also been too long since I've seen it. One of the complaints, you know, from critics for this movie, I can't think of the name, most famous pair, right? But also I have the same criticism of for Red October, is that your authority figures are so bumbling incompetent that it almost takes away from the movie, right? So that was like a complaint about the assistant deputy director, you know, Dwayne or whatever his face was in this movie. But I feel the same way about the Russian government, right? They're painted so badly as to be a caricature. But then also, I mean, Hunt for Red October, we've got fucking Sean Connery as the Russian officer, like, so playing the Egyptian, playing, you know, so while I love the movie, like I would have some quibbles about it being 100% perfect, you know, like I like the plot, I like the idea of it, I like a lot of stuff, but yeah, anyway, so, but also Hunt for Red October was McTiernan, right? So same director, I think, between the two of them as well. So that's another interesting intersection. But
right,
you know,
I really enjoyed how hilariously tropey and competent, maybe campy, I don't really understand the difference sometimes, of the deputy chief, whatever his name was, Dwayne, and obviously the FBI agents Johnson and Johnson, no relation.
Right.
But I didn't remember some of the very the fine things of what they had said of like, when we commandeer your men, we'll try to let you know.
Oh, yeah. The FBI are complete dicks about the whole thing. I mean, come on. The conversation right before they die. What do you think the breakage is going to be? I don't know, 20, 25% of the hostages? I can live with that. Like,
this is like Psycho.
Right?
Well, I think that's an interesting thing, because I keep making comparisons to The Fugitive, but that dynamic totally exists in The Fugitive too, where there's there's the hyper competent characters you like and you care about, but then you bring in the dumb people you love to hate, and you just hate them. You don't even like to hate them. You just don't like that they're involved, because in The Fugitive there's the stupid cops who just assume that the guy's guilty. He's a quack and whatever. And then, they're just idiots. And the hyper competent guy just doesn't care, right? That's the whole thing.
Benefits of him being Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Which is great. Tommy Lee Jones is great. So it's got that kind of, I think it's a great dynamic. It works super well.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, Die Hard, it's even more than that, because so there's the FBI and their incompetency. Like they were, so thrilled of like, yeah, we cut down the power grid, let's let him sweat it out, like they playing right into his hands. But then there was the deputy chief guy who was also the authority figure that you're angry at because he disagreed with Powell, but he was more complex. Like, as in, everything he said actually did have some plausibility. Maybe he's lying to you. Maybe he was a bartender to be able to recognize
Sure.
a fake ID. He wasn't wrong. He was just
The-
not on our side.
But the problem with a lot of that, though, is that he is completely speculating, whereas like Al is basing it off of what's happened. Al is basing his hunch off of things that John McClane said, the fact that there's a dead terrorist in the street, somebody got thrown out of a window. How do you explain that? Whereas the deputy chief is literally just grasping at straws, anything for it not to be the narrative, right? And I just want to highlight that's a thing that still exists, and it's hugely dangerous, right? Because what the deputy chief was saying, all of that was plausible, but he basically came down like it. I'm sorry, this just popped into my brain, so I have to apologize now. But it's like Sonya talking about being an atheist knight of the cross, right? It could be aliens. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be angels, but it's like, dude, that is not remotely based on the evidence that we have in front of us, right? Nothing says that this guy's a bartender. Nothing says that this guy is anything other than he presents himself to be. So yes, it could be the terrorist yanking your chain. Hans Gruber was intelligent enough. He could have planned this stuff around it, but found it largely unnecessary, right? But the chief just gets in the way because he's not basing anything off of what his senses are telling him, up to and including Ellis's death, right? He holds John McClane personally responsible because John McClane didn't give himself up in that moment. And all that would have done, like, it basically would have made the terrorists win, right? Or the thieves win because they're masquerading as terrorists, right? If John McClane gave himself up, he would have also been dead. They probably still would have killed Ellis. It just goes on and on. But it's a dangerous level of
hostages. And I'm not saying that the guy was faultless. I'm just saying, like, there's levels of complexity of the amount of authority figures there are to hate in this movie.
Sure. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. So in my opinion, he was completely incompetent, basically, with very few exceptions. And he was so high level that he's clearly worried about the politics in his career more than he was about the hostages, right? Because as soon as the FBI are like, we're going to shut down the power grid, he's like, oh my God, I better call the mayor. That's the wrong level of concern to have in that moment, but it's also very 80s. I mean, you see that in Ghostbusters, right? Like it's that kind of trope is there as much as any of the others. The FBI were competent, but I feel like they lost sight of the picture, right? They were trying to beat the terrorists. They weren't trying to save the hostages.
They were trying to ace the test. They looked at it and says, this is scenario A2, so this is the book that we're going to go by, the book that Hans Gruber knew. So they weren't like, their perception of what they were dealing with is not the reality.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, and that's highly evident in the fact that they were like, oh man, now the terrorists in the dark because they don't have flashlights. Let's let them sweat it out. Like, okay, like I get that but like the police do the same thing with the lights too, right? They were like, let's blind them and then they won't be able to do anything. And they're like, I guess they hadn't seen the anti-tank rockets yet at that point in time. But at that point, you should stop underestimating the people that you're going up against when they break out the anti-tank rockets and nuke your APC, right? I just like that should have told you that you were dealing with something way outside of your depth at that point. But, incompetent. So,
yeah. And the fact that they so readily took the bite of the facade of being terrorists, of like, you will release these people from Irish terrorism, these people from Asian terrorism, and even Carl's like, who are they? I read about them in Forbes.
Yeah, time in this case.
Okay, yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, they do reference Forbes at least once, but yeah.
Yeah, that was about the bridge. But
he read about them in Time magazine, I think it was.
Yeah.
So just, all of these people, you go waste your energy over there and leave us alone for another few minutes. I really like the bad guys in this movie. Bad guys are so important to any movie being really good, and these ones are just really fun. Because like the chemistry between almost all the actors really, but like Holly and Gruber of, what idiot put you in charge? And she said, you did when you killed my boss.
Right. Yeah, it's such a great line,
Yeah.
But to Hans's credit, I also like how agreeable they are in that moment too. Where she's like this, that, and the other thing. He's like, you know what, you're totally right. Let's get on it.
Yeah,
Which,
we have a pregnant woman,
doesn't...
and his face just like, oh god.
Right. Oh shit, she's in labor, isn't she? But yeah, like that's a great scene. And I mean, it doesn't absolve him of all the other terrible, evil things that he's doing, right? But it does show his humanity and the fact that he doesn't necessarily want to, well, shit, I don't know. Because, he does want to kill everybody there. So never mind. So, because the whole building thing, right?
Yeah, he was planning on putting, so he's happy to move a couch out of the office for the pregnant woman. And he's like, is that okay? Like, he actually cared about the answer. But then he is still planning on putting them all on the roof and then blowing it. Because they have to be on the roof for the escape helicopters that he's been demanding to be able to get there. And the hostages were supposed to go with to LA. It's like he cares and yet he doesn't. I don't know.
What about keeping them compliant, I guess?
Right.
And he's kind of like, he gets this, he's kind of fits into this archetype, except he's a terrorist, but he's actually a thief, into that gentleman thief in a way, at least how he presents himself.
I am an exceptional thief.
Right. And he recognizes Takagi's suit. I have a couple myself, so. Yeah.
And I didn't
get some there too.
Like so-and-so buys it from there too, is whatever. It's the fashion rumors and everything, because he had a classical education. He was able to spout off that thing about Alexander. I love the moment when he's like, they first really get there and take control, and he's looking at the notebook, all of his notes of everything he knows what's going on, but it has such a biblical feel, or like church, like he's having a sermon and he closes the book like a Bible. It was a great theatrical moment, I'd say.
And here, according to the schedule, I allowed them 5 minutes and 53 seconds to panic, and now it's time to be done. So, yeah.
It's like, if you give me the code while he's eating from their buffet platter.
Right. Which, I mean, humanizing elements as well. I like those details. You got, one of his thugs downstairs getting ready for the FBI to breach, and he's standing right in front of the snack counter and be like, I really want a candy bar right now, right before I shoot a bunch of people.
I love that guy.
Crunch.
When I was a kid, it's just something that's like looking at it. Like, yeah, I'm taking the candy bar.
Yeah, details, man. So,
it's such small, tiny details kind of make this movie in some way. Like when they're about to breach the building, the SWAT people, one of the guys gets caught on a thorn.
Yes.
And he overreacts. He was like, ow, Jesus. That was my mom's favorite movie, or part of this movie. It was just the ridiculousness of this big macho guy, supposedly, of being SWAT, is pissed off at a thorn.
Right. Yeah, no, it gets me every time too, right? Because it's like, we're badasses and we're going to storm the building with just the 4 of us and take down 12 terrorists. But ow, a thorn. So, Sorry, Ben. Are we making fun of Californians? Like, you're like, wait a minute,
No.
that hurts. That hurts my feelings.
No, it doesn't.
Because I feel like you get a fair bit of that contrasted too, right? You got John McClane as the tough New York badass, and then you've got all the LA sissy types,
Happy
even
people.
in the 1988.
Well, I mean, there's also the friend cop who isn't, right. I think it's not a East versus West Coast thing strictly, because you also have East Coast represented with the FBI showing up. I guess although they're probably local FBI agents, but still.
Right.
So
reminds me of Vietnam.
Every time he said something disparaging about California, it was because he was looking at happy people. Like a couple reuniting at the airport, fucking Californians, or a guy kissing him on the cheek at a party or whatever. It's like, you people are too happy and too weird.
Right.
You're not miserable enough. Don't you know the human condition here? Goddamn Californians.
Attitude. So,
I'm walking here.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about his buddy cop, though. And I mean, just to kind of highlight that a little bit, like, I like the fact that he stands up for what he feels is right, even though he's a sergeant, so he's not nobody, right? But at the same time, he's talking to the deputy chief and whatever, but, tells him to shove it, or is sarcastic with him a couple of times, right, through the movie, where it's like, like, oh, I think he's a bartender. It's like, no, sir, I don't think so, sir. Like all that stuff. And then the FBI shows up and he's like, want a breath mint? So
I love the confrontation that they have where he's like, anytime you feel like going home, you can consider yourself dismissed.
oh yeah, that's the
No,
yeah,
sir, you couldn't
Yeah.
drag me away.
right. Yeah, it's so great, and I'm glad he gets his moment at the end, which also to me like so. This intersected because I don't know if my subconscious picked up on it right, but one of the trivia points I saw this morning was the music cue when Powell shoots Carl at the end of the film was actually an unused track from Aliens. Okay.
Oh, really?
Which I feel is vitally important because I feel like that is almost a horror trope when that all goes down, right? Is because Carl died off screen. Well, not off screen, but he gets like hung,
Yeah.
right? He gets dragged downstairs as a presumably unconscious person, jumps up out of a tarp after you think he's already dead so that he can get one last stab at the heroes. And then you've got Al just there like a fucking monolith, just puts him down and kind of gets back in the seat more or less and things like that. But yeah, it was such a horror trope in that moment, in my opinion, where it was like, you know, you think you're safe from the villain, but he's in the back seat of the car or he's in the closet or whatever, you know, when you get home. And then Al was there to stop him. But yeah, apparently that was an unused track from Aliens that they co-opted for this movie. But
onto the subject of the music that they used, I had not remembered, and I love the fact that they were constantly using Christmas music and maybe altering it a little bit. And there's a detail of like whoever the composer was, he didn't want to do it to Beethoven. Why would you have to do this thing to Beethoven? It just
Right.
I'll butcher all of the rest of the ones, but why Beethoven? It's like, well, but they did it in Clockwork Orange, so
Yeah.
that's what convinced him.
right. And because he was a fan of Kubrick, right? So it was like, well, shit, you know, if Kubrick did it, then
Yeah, but I loved it. It was, I think that's a good, using Beethoven I think works because it can be so dramatic feeling when like they're looking at the vault and like it's like the theme song of the bad guys is majestic and ominous and Christmassy.
right. Well, and when they break into the vault, don't they have? Isn't it like "Ode to Joy" or something like that
Yeah.
too? Like the classical comes back again.
It's
So,
something like
yeah. Yeah.
that. It's also, it's just so. I just love the. There's just so much. This I love the nerd as well. The nerd bad guy.
Theo.
He's really good. We haven't even talked about him.
Yes.
He's really good.
It's great.
Yeah, it always. I always remember his line. You know, it's like, and all through the house, nothing was stirring except for these four assholes moving in standard 2x2 cover formation. You know, so yeah. Like I hate him in the sense that he's completely crass about, you know, just getting people murked, right?
Yeah, completely
like killing the
apathetic.
guard.
Does not care whatsoever.
Yeah, you know, killing the guard and. I think also the armored car, right? You know, it's like the quarterback is toast, you know, just all of that stuff. But that line always makes me giggle. That
also, just like with Takagi, Carl and Theo had a bet as to whether Takagi was going to give up the code. Takagi said, "No, you might as well kill me." So Gruber kills him, and then Carl pays over $20. And then afterwards, Gruber's like, "You can break the code, right? I didn't just screw us over." So
right.
he did bring me
I
for
like
my charming personality.
The duality. Here's another example of like this. So he's like this kind of gentleman thief. Oh yeah, you can have a sofa, etc. So he is like stone cold. It's just like instantly. He's like, okay, fine, bang.
Right.
Same with Ellis as well, right? It's just like, okay, you can't deliver, bang. Like he's like completely cold.
Well, yeah, and when I caught myself with the whole, like, they were going to blow the roof with everybody on it anyway, right? He probably went into there knowing everybody was going to die anyway. So, you know, at that point, the value of human life had definitely already been paid, right? In his mind, everybody's dead. So if they can't immediately help me, they just get them out of the way because they're going to die anyway, sooner rather than later.
He's going to sit on the beach earning 20%.
Right. Yeah. Pretty wild. Merry Christmas. Yippee-ki-yay and all that.
Yeah, good lines all around. You guys should watch the second one too, and if it's been a while for you, you should do it.
But don't those action movies? I mean, I haven't seen them. I know them by reputation. The reputation I've heard is that the Die Hard movies are very slowly the apotheosis of John McClane, where he becomes much less grounded, becomes the superhero.
Yeah,
Well, once you get to, I think it's like Live Free and Die Hard, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where they really kind of make him a super cop, and whatever.
it's not really Die Hard anymore after the first. I would say the first three is in the Die Hard's like how it's supposed to be. Third one is my least favorite, but it is actually good. But it's just because I think it's because it's not a Christmas thing, and I watch these during Christmas, so I just don't really watch the third one.
That's where you lose the thread. But
You have to keep the formula. We expect the setting to be Christmas.
Yeah, but you're right. Like it definitely breaks it in Live Free or Die Hard. And I remember actually being upset about that when I saw the first trailer, right? Because in the trailer, you had that scene where he basically steps out of a spinning car so that he could shoot at the bad guys or whatever. Like they like spin out his cop car or something. If I remember the movie trailer, etc. And it's just like, wait a minute, like did this turn into a James Bond film? Like what's going on? Like where it's just like way over the top action, like you were talking about, right? Like and there are places for those movies. Obviously, I've seen all of them, right? Whether it's Expendables or Lethal Weapon or all of Arnold, Sylvester Stallone, Heat, whatever, like on and on and on, Commando, all of those, right? But it is like Lethal Weapon a little bit. It's got its own niche, but Die Hard as well, where it's just like part of the appeal is that he's just a dude, and like at the end of the day, that's one of my favorite tropes, right? Is like a regular dude out of his depth trying to figure it out anyway. It's part of why I like the Cthulhu mythos so much, right? But it's much different than you've got, literally Arnold's like, let me stop over at the armory to get my 4-tier rocket launcher and my 18 knives and my hand grenades and go visit this guy in his villa, So I don't know why I've got Commando on the brain, but I just see him like, suiting up with like everything.
I've only ever seen the
contrast. Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
I remember loving that
good.
movie, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But I still remember him carrying that tree trunk.
Yeah, right. Remember when I said I'd kill you last? I lied. So, like, yeah, come on. It's Commando. Commando's like, that's the super 80s
I wonder if
action
there's any
movie,
streaming service that has it. I might actually watch it tonight.
It's always on the internet somewhere.
Right.
It's on Disney Plus. It looks like.
What? Commando
It was
is
a children's movie,
right.
I guess.
Well, not
don't
even
think
just
it's
that,
one.
but like,
That's where Die Hard is too. So that's where I watched it.
what in the freaking European? Yeah. So it doesn't seem like it's streaming anywhere for free for us, but that is wild.
I mean, Google might be wrong, but I think it sees some in Denmark, so it's probably correct. But I can quickly check.
Yeah, it's just on Amazon Prime for us. So, like, not even IMDb TV, which is where I watched Die Hard because it was the only place streaming it for free. So.
Oh, it was on Disney Plus in 4K remastered with HD.
Hey,
and
they're not
everything.
giving us money. You can
I know.
chill.
Yeah, shill. That's what you said, right? Shill.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's right here. Awesome.
They give us money, then maybe my tune will change, but I don't know.
I tell you what,
can try.
I won't plug them more than once a week. Okay, at most.
So I think we've enthused for an hour. We have no real criticisms of Die Hard, like not really.
Not even me.
We're laughing at the fact that it is a product of 1988, and that's the closest it came to a criticism.
Right, it's old. Why are you so old? So, but yeah.
Right. So I don't even know what we're doing next time, or when next time is. So stay tuned.
Goodbye forever.
Adios.